Good afternoon, everyone. We're ready to go ahead and get started. We may have a few joining us as we get going here, but we'll get them caught up quickly. So welcome, everyone, to another Global Entrepreneurship Week event here this afternoon. Welcome to those of you here in the room, as well as those that may be online joining us. So we have another great event for you this afternoon with the Small Business Administration. So hopefully a lot of you were able to join in on the last session just about an hour ago. This session is more targeted maybe than our last session. So this is information that is specifically geared toward women-owned small businesses and also with some contracting information as well. So I would definitely like to welcome our speaker that we have with us today from the SBA. So last session we had somebody from the Eastern District Office from the Small Business Administration, and now we are flipping over to the Western District Office out of Pittsburgh for the Small Business Administration. So on behalf of all of Global Entrepreneurship Week committee members, Penn State, the Office of Entrepreneurship and Commercialization, it's my pleasure to welcome Dave Pinkoski, who is a business opportunity specialist with the Small Business Administration. So Dave, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. I just came up from Pittsburgh, got here about 20 minutes ago, so roads were good, everything was nice and clear, which was nice. But I really appreciate Tim and his team and John and the rest of the crew here at the Penn State SBDC for giving me the opportunity to come up here today and talk to you about government contracting, our women-owned business certification, and some of the different opportunities we have available for women-owned small businesses at the federal level. Now, some people think, how does contracting kind of fit into global entrepreneurship opportunities and things of that nature? But you'll actually find a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is just very general business type of housekeeping items that is very applicable to different areas of business and as well as the different areas of government. So we'll get into some international stuff a little bit. We're going to talk about marketing, women-owned small business certification, and one of my favorite things obviously is government contracting. So just to give you a little info about the SBA, if you haven't heard already, we are a federal agency, as Tim said. My district office is the Western Pennsylvania District Office. We cover the 27 counties of Western Pennsylvania. And of course, our headquarters is in DC with all the other federal agencies and so on and so forth. We have 68 district offices, as I mentioned, all across the country. So if anybody's from outside of Pennsylvania and you're not covered by one of our DOs, we can easily get you in touch with your local district. But that's pretty much it, just the map of kind of how we function and how we work here in Pennsylvania. And what do? A lot of business counseling. Our mission at the SBA is really to help small businesses grow, expand, recover, whatever that may mean to you and wherever you are in your small business life cycle. We are a support agency, we're a resource agency, and we're funded by the federal government with the sole purpose of helping small businesses grow, expand, and develop. And we do a lot of that counseling and coaching and things we do in-house, but we do rely very heavily on our core funded partners. So of course our small business development centers, our SCORE chapters where you can get some free mentoring, and also our women's business centers. Now in Western Pennsylvania we actually have one women's business center. It is located at Chatham University, but they will work with anybody regardless of where you're located. Okay, so federal contracting essentials. Just kind of going to jump into this a little bit about why you may want to explore federal contracts. And there's a lot of reasons, there's a lot of good about federal contracting. Now it's not easy, but it can be a very lucrative market for you. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that we buy anything and everything you could possibly imagine. We are the world's largest purchaser of products and supplies. We buy it all. There's not too much we don't purchase. It can be a great way when you're getting into contracting to generate additional revenue for your company. One of the really cool things is having the availability of past contract data. It's really cool that once a contract is awarded, it becomes part of the public record. So it's very easy to go and do some research, take a look at some websites, and get a feel for the market. You know, what agencies are out there buying your products and services? How much are they paying? You know, who are your competitors? That's all very, excellent data that you really can't find in the commercial sector. You know, a lot of that stuff's private or They keep it under wraps. However, with the federal government and most government entities, once it's awarded, it's out there for anybody to view. Another great thing about working with the federal government is you're always guaranteed to get paid. We actually have what's called the Federal Prompt Payment Act, which requires that government agencies pay their contractors within 30 days of submission of a proper invoice. So, sometimes, depending on where you're at in the supply chain, you can be waiting 2, 3, 4, or 5 months before you get paid, and so on and so forth. And you have to wait till you get money from somebody who's waiting to get their money, and they can't, you can't pay your vendors or your suppliers. We don't have that issue in the federal sector. And the majority of our agencies pay well under that 30 days, typically about 2 weeks. So most are within 14 days. Almost never goes past 30 unless you hit that little caveat of submission of a proper invoice. Typically, if you don't get paid on time, it's because the small business vendor didn't submit the invoice to the agency in the manner described in the solicitation. So of course, like I said, we buy anything you can think of. We'll talk about some of the little goofy things we buy sometimes. I have a slide on that. It's always fun to discuss. This is just a quick breakdown though on a percentage basis of sort of what the federal budget looks like. About 36% of what we buy goes to supplies for equipment, electronics, transportation, 35% for services like engineering, R&D. We have 19% for agricultural products, finance, administration, 7% for construction, and 3% for wholesale and retail. Now, sometimes people look at those numbers, especially when I show this percentage and also when we get to the certification portion of today's event, and think, wow, those numbers are kind of low for some of those sectors. But we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar federal budget, so those percentages are well into the billions, even when you're down to like those 3 and 7%. So we spend a lot of money. As far as where that money goes, about 64 cents out of every dollar we spend actually goes to the Department of Defense. So of course that's going to be our military, Army, Navy, Defense Logistics Agency, which is a support agency for the military. And about 36 cents goes to our civilian agencies. And of course that money does go down through and funnel through our subcontractors. Not everything is a prime contractor. We have a lot of subcontracting opportunities in the federal government, which are very beneficial for small businesses. One of the great things about subcontracting is you get to learn the ropes of being a federal worker and kind of learn the performance aspect of it, but you are not on the hook for the entire federal contract. So you don't have that extra layer of contract administration and dealing with the agency. So starting out as a subcontractor is a very, very beneficial for a lot of our small businesses. So commonly purchased products and services, we buy anything anybody else uses on a daily basis. Food, clothing, office products, cleaning, furniture, you name it, we buy it. If it's something you use in your daily life or to run your company, we're gonna buy it too. Absolutely no difference when it comes to that stuff. However, one of the really cool things and interesting things about working with the federal government is we have a lot of uncommonly purchased products and services. We buy some really goofy things sometimes that people look at and they're just kind of like, why on earth is the federal government spending money on that? We buy government-specific items. We're out there buying missiles and rockets from the Lockheeds and the Boeings and the big, DoD contractors out there. But then we have a lot of other goofy things we buy. Cadaver parts. Some of those are actually pretty gruesome when those solicitations come out. They're interesting to see because it'll say, they want to buy a left arm. They don't care if it's up to the shoulder or not, but they want the elbow and the wrist attached. And why are we buying that? Well, we're training our combat medics, in the military. People need to practice on things. So sometimes you'll see solicitations like that. Beaver relocation services. See those in the National Park Service on occasion. We're out there for leisure activities in some of the national parks, and they're building a dam where, they really shouldn't be, and it kind of infringes on what we're doing, and we're in their way, they're in ours. So much to the dismay of my little friend in the picture there, we have to relocate them on occasion. So we buy some really obscure stuff. So my point with this slide is just to kind of show you there's probably an opportunity regardless of what you do. Now, it may not be a very lucrative opportunity from a volume standpoint, like we're not buying these types of things every single day like we are with other common products and services, but the idea is I just want you to be aware that those sorts of things are out there. So we do buy some really crazy stuff sometimes, and it is interesting to kind of look at. So why wouldn't you want to work with the federal government? Well, same reason as anything else. It's extremely competitive. I would argue no more competitive than already being in business, but we do have a lot of small businesses going after the different federal opportunities that come out every day. And obviously, if you're in an industry sector that has a lot of other competitors already, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of those competitors that you deal with commercially are also going after federal work. We do have a lot of regulations. There's no doubt about that. Jumping into the federal sector and being a federal supplier can take a lot of time and effort, and it can be cumbersome when you're first getting into it. Without a doubt, there's reporting requirements to your contracts. You may be subject to different contract audits. So when I have audits on the slide there, I don't mean IRS audits per se, but we'll actually audit contracts to make sure that you came in at the correct budget, the agency spent the money properly, and all that sort of thing. Did we get what we paid for? And there's absolutely no guarantees with federal contracting or any level of government contracting. And that's one of the biggest downsides, is a lot of times clients will go through these things, go through some of the processes we're going to talk about, and they'll spend a lot of time and effort learning how to find these solicitations, how to market their services to federal buyers, fill out an RFP or an RFQ, and kind of learning the government verbiage, but there's no guarantees. At the end of the day, though, we are very mission focused at the federal level. If you kind of think about how the military operates, that's sort of our line of thinking when it comes to federal contracts. We want the best suppliers we can possibly get at fair and reasonable prices. So the more you can do to really show and prove to us that you are that supplier we should choose, that you can be our prime problem solver for the issue that we have at hand, that's going to help you tremendously in getting contracts. The great news is, for as difficult as this can be, especially when you're first getting into it, we have an amazing resource network to help you work through these things. We have our small business development centers, obviously. We have our WBCs that I mentioned. We at the SBA are more than happy to walk you through these steps. We also have our PTAC centers. PTAC stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and they're actually funded by the Department of Defense to serve as an educational resource to help small businesses navigate the government marketplace on the federal, state, and local levels. So they will help you with all three levels of government and help you work through these certifications and registrations and actually teach you and give you the tools you need to compete successfully at the federal level. So all that being said, and again, I don't want to scare anybody off, it does take time and effort without a doubt, but about 20,000 new small business vendors do get their first contract, federal contract, every year. So the opportunities are there. So don't be scared off by doing some of the paperwork and working through some of these processes. Believe me, I mean, we have a lot of experts that will streamline these things for you as much as we possibly can. It's not as painful as you might think it is. So one of the things I like to talk about is expectations from both the vendor side and the government side. And these are things that I hear from clients on a regular basis. Some people think it's really easy, that it's like, hey, I pay my taxes on time every year. I'm just going to show up and you're going to give me a government contract, right? Other times people say, oh, I'm interested in government contracting, but unless I go grease my senator's palm, I'm not going to get any money, so it's not worth my time and effort. They think it's rigged and all the big companies grab all the business and all that stuff. The truth is absolutely in the middle. Again, it's not simple, it's not as easy as just showing up, but it's definitely not rigged or somehow skewed so that small businesses don't get their fair share of opportunities for contracting. So the first couple, as far as just giving them contracts, we don't do that. Keep in mind, these are not social service programs. Government contracting is business opportunities. We're going to want something from our money, for the money we give you. We want that quality product or service from you as that potential supplier. As far as the impossible thing, that's absolutely no way that you could rig a government contract. I'm sure that there's somebody really creative, they could come up with some kind of way, but there are teams of people that work on these procurements before they ever even hit the street with a solicitation offer. It would take a lot of time and effort and a very intricate network of a lot of people doing a lot of things wrong to actually rig a federal contracting opportunity. It's just not something that happens. Also, as far as the big guys grabbing all the business, that's absolutely false. At the federal level, we have what's called the Simplified Acquisition Threshold, or the SAT, S-A-T. And what that states is that all federal opportunities anticipated to be valued at $250,000 or less are automatically set aside for small businesses. So anything up to $250,000 is automatically a small business set aside, as long as we can potentially find at least 2 small businesses that could potentially do the work for us. So the only way we'll open that up to the big companies is if we absolutely cannot find small businesses to do the work. And a $250,000 or even $100,000 contract for a lot of our small clients clients, that's a pretty big deal. That is a nice amount for a lot of small businesses. So don't think that you're not going to have these opportunities. They're absolutely out there, and again, it's absolutely doable with the assistance of our resource partners. As far as from the government side, our expectations are pretty simple. We're the same as any other consumer that's out there, looking for quality products and services, reputable vendors, good deliverables, competitive prices, and simplicity. We're going to talk about how to make it easier for contracting officers and federal purchasers to actually buy from you when we get to the marketing piece. But it's all about you just providing that mission critical support that we're looking for. You could be supplying some sort of life-saving product or service to our military that we need. That's something that's very, very critical for us to support the work that our agencies and our employees do every single day. So again, I don't see anything too crazy on there, and I think most of you would agree, nothing that nobody else looks for, every single day when they're making a buying decision. Good products and services, quality, reasonable prices, and simplicity. So the first thing I always like to have all of my clients do before they go jumping into any of these federal registrations or certifications or trying to go down all these different rabbit holes, of which there can be quite a few, is take a good, honest look at your company and make sure you're even prepped and ready for a government contract. So the first thing I'd like clients to do is just kind of review your performance history. Again, we're very mission focused at the federal level. And one of the things that comes up oftentimes for small businesses is how can I get a contract if I don't have a lot of experience? We typically want to see a minimum of 2 years of successful experience in the commercial sector before we'll take a chance on awarding a vendor a contract. So we want you to be able to show us that you've done projects similar in scope to what it is you're bidding on, that you have that good history of past performance. That's very, very key for us. So always make sure that you have, similar experience for the type of work you're trying to get us to give you, in that same industry and in that same field. You're going to need a commitment from your management. Now, I don't know if you are all business owners, or maybe some of you may work for a small business and you're just in charge of the contracting department or, business development or what have you. There will be some market entry costs as far as just, allocating staff time to learning some of these things. Again, learning the government language and the verbiage and all of these fun little acronyms we have, and how to respond properly to RFPs and RFQs and those sorts of things. It's going to take some marketing. Again, you have to know and identify what agencies are out there that are buying what you sell to make sure this is really worth your while to even jump into before you spend a lot of time and effort going through this type of stuff. We're going to talk about how to do some market research and also how to do some marketing here in a little bit. And of course, sales. You have to do the work. Nobody is going to fill out a bid for you. Contracting officers are federal buying experts. It is not their job or their mission to help you compete and win a contract. Their job is to negotiate and award the best contract they can so that they can get those mission critical support services they need for their agencies. So it's going to require some personal contact, relationship building, understanding the needs of the agencies and the people you're working with. Size is absolutely not important. Many contracts are awarded to companies with 5 or fewer employees, and that is absolutely true. We have some phenomenal companies in Western Pennsylvania that do some really amazing work, and you'd be shocked. I actually have one 8A client right now. It has a small construction firm with about a staff of 4 or 5. They have a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal doing renovations in the White House. They're from the mountains here in Western Pennsylvania, a tiny little town that nobody would ever even be able to find on a map. It's a small firm, like I said, and they've had this deal for about 2-3 years, and it just got extended again. And they have a federal contract, actually doing those renovation projects. Really, really cool. I have another client has worked with NASA down in Houston. I mean, we have clients doing all kinds of amazing things all across the country for a number of our different federal agencies, and they're very, very small businesses. So don't feel like you have to go out and ramp up your operation and hire 100 people and all that sort of thing. Financial resources is very important, so I always like to bring this up. We do not front people money. Sometimes in small business, depending on your industry, it's not uncommon. Maybe you're getting a new roof put on. You give the contractor half down, they come do the project, pay the rest at the end, that sort of thing. We don't do that at the federal level. So you're going to have to make sure that you have the resources and capacity to perform on a contract before you actually bid and put in a solicitation offer on that work. So you're going to make sure that you want to work with your banking partner. So obviously, Chad at First Commonwealth here and everything. They're going to help you make sure you have that line of credit you need to buy equipment if you do need to ramp up, quickly, get those things in line, to hire staff and working capital and things of that nature. So that's something you're going to have to do first. If you're a manufacturer, quality assurance plans are always going to be a big thing for us, especially if you're manufacturing parts for the Department of Defense. If you're doing machine parts or something that could be being used on a weapon or a vehicle or a refurbishing type of thing, we're going to have a lot of rules and regulations as far as how we need those parts machined and what kind of tolerances and all that sort of thing. So ISO 9000 certification is typically going to be preferred, or something equivalent to that is something we're usually going to look for when it comes to manufacturing opportunities. Now, office management, that is very, very, very important. And I always kind of relate a little story here. If anybody's ever seen the movie Dodgeball with Vince Vaughn, Ben Stiller, average Joe's gym, the gym's not doing real great. The bank examiner comes out, they're going to foreclose on the gym. And Vince Vaughn's character is kind of like, okay, well, what do I need to give you? Bank examiner says, hey, I need to see your records, your business records. Do you have them? He's like, oh, yeah, I call those keepers. I have all that stuff. Takes her into the office, opens up the closet, and all this piles of junk just falls down and hits this poor lady in the head. There's no sort of record-keeping system. There's nothing in order. It's just all kind of mixed up and jumbled up, and it's just a complete nightmare. If that's how you do business right now, clean that up. I'm not making any judgment, but I've been on way too many business client visits in my day where I've seen these things happening, in person. And, you need to have good, accurate record keeping when dealing with the federal government. You're going to have responsibilities as far as keeping certain contracts for a certain period of time. You're going to want to make sure you have your timesheets properly filed and things for some of those contract audits that I mentioned. The worst thing is, and I get panic calls from clients every now and again where they're losing their minds because, hey, something got pulled for an audit and they don't have records of anything. They just tossed it in a box or tossed it in a closet, or maybe they're applying for a certification and they need their operating agreement that they haven't seen in 10 years since they opened their company. Make sure you know where your business documents are and keep good, accurate records. And even beyond the contracting arena, that's just good general business that will help you tremendously. Technology, it's not too much of an issue these days, but I do like to mention it. You need access to email, agency websites. Obviously, not every area, especially the more rural areas, don't have the high-speed internet. We pretty much do everything online these days and virtually for contracting opportunities. So you want to make sure you have access to good quality internet for things like our procurement, electronic funds transfers, integrated enterprise environment, and things of that nature, just to make sure that you can get paid and have everything up and running there. And you really want to ID your core competencies. Now, this one's the final one there that I really like to stress. One of the worst things that small business clients do when they first come to us and take a look at government contracting is they tell us, hey, we can do it all. You tell me what you need and I'll do it. I'm your supplier for anything you could possibly imagine. And you're a small firm with 3 people. We know you can't do it. You know you probably can't do it either, okay? So don't just try and throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. We want those performance, mission-focused individuals and firms that can really step up and do that work for us. So we would rather that you are just an expert in 1 or 2 or 3 core things and that you can absolutely crush any contract we may award you as opposed to trying to impress us with you doing all this great stuff. And sometimes when I see people's government profiles in what's called the System for Awards Management, which we're going to talk about, that's the federal government's vendor identification database. They'll have 60 different NAICS codes in their SAM profile, and they have 2 people. You can't be an expert in every single thing with 2 people. And as a business counselor, I absolutely get it. You're excited, right? You don't want to turn down work. You just want those opportunities, so you're just trying to generate any interest you can in whatever industry. But we don't operate like that. We really want to see the mission-focused, mission-critical. So always keep that thinking in the forefront. So as far as getting started, really just a couple things you want to do. Now, this is an area that's very similar to how you'd want to approach some international opportunities as well. You want to do some market research. You want to figure out what agencies are out there that are buying what you sell on a regular basis that may have an opportunity for you. You don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to sell something to the FBI if we already have an entire department that does what you do in-house. You don't want to waste those hours, those critical staff person hours, trying to generate sales for an agency that just doesn't buy it. And the same way with another country. If you're doing something international, it doesn't make sense to try and beat down the door of a country that's not going to buy what you're selling. So you always want to do a little bit of research. Now, the great thing with federal contracting is it's really easy to do that research. First thing you're going to want to know is what's called your NAICS code, North American Industry Classification System code. That is a code that just designates what industry you're in. Very, very simple to find. You can go to the census.gov website, look it up within a minute or two. If you ever need any help with that, I'm more than happy to help you with it. Our Small Business Development Center team can do that for you. Our PTAX will be happy to do that for you. Very simple to find. Again, it's just that quick little code that says what industry you're in. After you know what your industry you have, per your NAICS, you want to take a look at some federal websites. The two big ones I have there are SAM.gov and GSA.gov. Now, you heard me mention SAM, that's the federal government's vendor registration system, but that's also the same website where we house any opportunity valued at $25,000 and over. So if we have a federal solicitation coming out and it's going to be $25,000, it's going to be posted to SAM.gov. So SAM serves two purposes for us. It's our vendor registration portal, and it's also where we have those award notices and those solicitation opportunities. So it's very easy to jump on SAM.gov, plug in your NAICS code, and see what kind of opportunities are available. You can look at current opportunities that are already there. You can look at past award data and see what opportunities were awarded previously. It's all public information that's right there 24/7 anytime you want to take a look at it. So definitely spend a little bit of time. That'll help you tremendously in figuring out what agencies are buying what you sell and where your best chance for potential opportunities to actually win some of those contracts are going to be. The other great thing you can do is request past procurement history reports from the local PTAX centers. Now, PTAX, again, they're not funded by SBA, but they are very critical partners for us. They have access to some different portals and things that we don't even have at the federal level, where they can actually help you access these marketing pieces and this market research. So they can run some very detailed reports for you, spit it out of their system, and email it over to you, and it'll give you a nice breakdown of not only federal opportunities, of course, which is my area of expertise these days, but also state and local government, which is really, really cool. So if you want to work with different states, you want to see a past procurement history report maybe for the state of New York or Pennsylvania, what have you, they can typically do that for you and find you some really cool information that way. So definitely keep that in mind. And another big thing, trust the data. Now, I'm all for trying to explore new market opportunities with federal agencies. Sometimes we're a little stuck in our ways at the federal government and not as open to new ideas as we probably should be. We all know that. But, you want to make sure you trust the data. And what I mean is, if an agency just doesn't buy what you sell, don't continually try to knock their door down and beat a dead horse and waste the time to do that. And I have a very extreme example of this, but it's one of the most well, I guess extreme again, just the example that I have that I'll share with you, is a number of years ago, I had a client, this lady decided that she didn't like the ankle monitoring system. So if somebody, gets in trouble, occasionally they end up on house arrest and end up with an ankle bracelet. She felt there was a lot of stigma with that for these people when they had those, and she felt that it was something that was unnecessary. So she developed at the time pretty much a bracelet that did the same thing, but it was more like a watch. Now, this was right around the time Apple Watches and Galaxy Watches and all that stuff were starting to come out too, and she was really excited about it. Now, the problem was with her new idea was the fact that we don't buy that at the federal level. We do not ankle monitor people. That's more of a state and local government thing. So she developed this bracelet and was insistent on selling it to the federal government, but we just didn't have the opportunities. The other problem she had was this bracelet was also more expensive than the ankle monitoring systems that the state and local governments that do that were already buying. So there's no incentive for us to spend more money just because she felt there was some sort of social issue with somebody having an ankle bracelet versus a smaller wrist bracelet that wasn't quite as cumbersome and such. So I gave her past procurement history reports, told her, this really doesn't sound like a good solid idea. Maybe you could retool, rethink a little bit. Get your costs down, maybe represent it then to the state and the local governments who use it, and so on and so forth. She didn't like that. She went to a couple of different PTAX centers. They gave her the same research I did. Very unhappy with that. So she finally found herself a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., who was all too happy to take her money to petition Congress to start using ankle monitoring bracelets, allegedly, at the federal level. And it's gone absolutely nowhere, as you can imagine, because that would take a complete overhaul of our judicial system just so this lady could sell these bracelets. All right? Don't do that. She got into this guy for over 6 figures because she just would refuse to believe the data that somehow, somewhere, these opportunities were going to be for her at the federal level. All right? If it just doesn't make sense, cut your losses and move on. So again, I still can't get over that she did that. Don't know whatever happened to her, so I don't really have a good ending to the story, but I don't imagine she ever found any success with that. So again, just keep it keep it streamlined and understand what it is you can do. All right. So as far as actually getting registered to do business with the federal government, and this is something you're going to want to do even potentially for international opportunities, is you have to register in the System for Award Management that I've already mentioned a few times now. SAM is simply our federal vendor identification database. SAM registration is fairly quick and easy to do. You should easily be able to register in the SAM system in about 45 minutes. It is not overly cumbersome, it's not too terrible, but it is a 2-step process. So you want to go to sam.gov. One of the first things that you'll do when you first start populating your company information is you'll be issued what's called a Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI number. That is a unique character that the federal government uses for ID purposes, data entry and things of that nature, just kind of keeping track of your business. You'll get that, and once you have that, you'll log into the system and actually populate your sam.gov profile. And all SAM is asking for is just your general business information. There are no wrong answers in sam.gov, okay? It's all about what is your company. All you have to do is work through those questions and make sure you answer everything to the best of your ability and properly. And if you do find you make an error, even after you go through SAM and submit it, you can actually correct that. So it's not set in stone. I've had people call me just crying or in a panic, again, because they messed something up in their SAM registration, or they fudged a number wrong, or transposed something, and we're just like, oh my God, the CIA or the FBI is going to come arrest me. What do I need to do to fix this? Okay? You're federally mandated to keep your SAM registration active at least once a year, so you have to go in and keep it updated anyway. If you ever change your phone number, want to add a NAICS code, again, your North American Industry Classification System code, to identify a new service or a product that you're offering, you can very easily go to your SAM record and change that at any time. So it's not overly cumbersome. You just have to go in, start the process, get that UEI number. You'll go to a system called login.gov, and SAM will walk you through all that. That'll help you create a federal profile. Then it'll kick you back to sam.gov, and you'll go through that registration process. So about 45 minutes, you'll be able to complete it. Once you submit it, within about 2 to 4 weeks, you'll be issued, once it goes through to the Federal Service Desk, you'll be issued what's called a CAGE code. That's a commercial and government entity code. Once you have that code, you're eligible to start bidding on any federal contract that you find. So a CAGE code is your unique identifier that'll be used for things like payments, security clearances, and things of that nature. So it's really not that bad of a process. People get really, really nervous about the System for Awards Management stuff. The other thing I always caution you people on, and clients, is do not pay for it. If you go to Google and you just type in sam.gov, you're going to get a whole laundry list of websites of alleged SAM websites that all look pretty official. Now, sam.gov is a completely free site, so always make sure you're on the .gov website, because if you end up on a .com or a .net, there are firms that will do your SAM registration for you, and they will be more than happy to charge you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to do it. And I've had clients not realize they were on an unofficial site. They go through the process, and they were actually on a consultant's website, populating information into there, and then they get a bill. So do not do that. Always make sure you're on the official .gov site. That we use very few .com or .net websites at the federal level. Virtually everything's going to end in .gov, and also keep in mind with contracting, especially federal contracting, it's virtually all free of charge. There's almost nothing you will ever have to pay for. So if somebody's trying to sell you something, take a hard look at that. If you're really not sure if it's legit or not, send it over to me, send it over to John or Tim at the SBDC. We'll take a look at that, and we can normally tell you pretty quickly whether or not it's legit. 99.9% of the time, though, it's not. So don't even bother, doing that. It's one of the worst things when that happens with clients. Oh, John.
Just talk about when they get the number. Is it online? Do they get it through snail mail?
Yep. Yep, I was going to get there. Thank you. Yeah, good. But yes, everything will be done through email. So you'll have your user profile, which is your personal profile on there. So once you submit that, it'll go through the process to go to the Federal Service Desk, and then SAM will send you via email your cage code. And once you have that email, you're active in SAM in your SAM profile, and that's when you can actually start bidding. So the final step that I always like to mention, though, is the Small Business Administration's Dynamic Small Business Search website. Now, during your SAM registration, you'll actually come to a page in there, and it'll ask you, would you like to populate your profile in the SBA's DSBS website? And a lot of small business clients skip right over that, or they click no, thinking they'll come back to it later. And what that is, you always want to click yes and do that. The Dynamic Small Business Search website in sam.gov is a portal I should say, that's only available to small businesses, and that's our marketing piece for federal buying experts, for our federal contracting officers. So what that does is, when you click yes and actually develop that profile, DSBS is going to pull your basic information from SAM, but it's also going to take you to another website to allow you to populate more information about your company. This is where you can tell us and our buying staff about all the great things that your business does every day. You know, the SAM registration is just a registration portal with your basic information. DSBS is where you can really talk about your company and explain what it is you do. You can tell us about some of those great projects you do. You can give us some information about your bonding capacity if you're in an industry that requires it. You know, you can have all that information readily available for contracting officers when they're doing their market research and they're coming out there and trying to find those vendors. It's all going to be readily available and right there for them. So absolutely make sure you do that. That's a system that SBA has specifically for our small business vendors, just as a way to help them get their information in front of those federal buyers. So it's really just the SAM registration is really all you need in getting your UEI and your cage. So yeah, at that point you're officially able to bid, but do not neglect that dynamic small business search. All right. So as far as how to get started, you've registered in SAM, got your cage code, you have a DSBS profile. Now it's time to actually start looking for some of those federal opportunities and seeing what's actually available for you presently. So I mentioned sam.gov, how it houses anything for $25,000 and over. But I'm a big fan of what our PTAC partners do in this case. Again, all of our PTAC centers are funded by DoD, so they are funded with federal grant money. And they actually have electronic bid matching systems. And their portals are pretty much online scrapers. Many of you are sure familiar with those. They'll work with you to develop a custom search profile, plug all of your company data into their online portal, and then their system will go out and scan all the federal, state, and local government websites for opportunities for the type of work you're looking for. So again, it's important for you to have the right industry, your NAICS codes, and all that information. So you can put that into their system, and then their system will do all the work for you and bring the solicitation opportunities to you. One of the things that's really disappointing that a lot of small business clients, when they first kind of find this out, is each governing body that's out there can set their own procurement rules and regulations. So for example, if you want to do work for all 50 state governments, plus the federal government, that's 51 potential different registrations and websites you're going to have to register in and go out and look at every single day just to try to find things to bid on. If you use the PTAC program through one of their bid matching programs with this scraper, that system will scan all those websites for you, consolidate it, and will send the notices directly to you via email. So it's going to save you a ton of time and staff power of actually even going out trying to find things to bid on. The great thing about the bid match, since it's the government-funded subsidized version, virtually every PTAC here, or at least in Western Pennsylvania, I can speak for that, they either offer it free of charge or very little charge. So if it's not free, it might be like $25 a year in some cases. If you went out and bought one of these systems on your own, which you could do, you're looking at, again, another $2,000 or $3,000. So use the free government version. You know, that's why we have it. That's why the PTACs use their grant money to buy it on behalf of the clients, so that they can help you find these notices very easily and get this information to you very quickly and efficiently. So take advantage of that. You also want to take a look at the different training programs, attending things like this. We have a lot of different classes, both at the SBA and our other partners, obviously, things like RFP development and different things of that nature. So there's a lot of opportunities for training and everything to help you learn how to actually respond to these things once you start looking at the solicitations. And it's always a good idea when you can to attend different local workshops. There's a lot of different procurement conferences and things that go on in Western PA, Eastern PA. As a state, our SBA offices are very very active. We have a number of different events where you can actually get FaceTime and matchmaking with a lot of these buying people at the federal level and also our state and local governments. So that's pretty much it. You know, you actually start to find some of these things to bid on. You've done your registration and you're in the game, so to speak, to start taking a look at some of the different solicitation methods and some of the different procurement opportunities that are out there. So when we buy things, when we're soliciting products and services at the federal level, we actually buy things in a number of different ways. A lot of people think that it's just, that we buy things cheaply all the time or just the lowest possible price. That's not always the case. So we have a couple of different things that I want to mention here, such as micro purchases. The federal micro purchase threshold is $10,000. So what that means is we actually don't even solicit offers for anything under $10,000 or less. So we have a lot of small business clients at our office that simply really focus on those small dollar opportunities because you can get a lot of work at $9,999. That's a pretty big amount. It can buy a lot of stuff, right? They're not subject to the different federal procurement requirements and things of that nature. They're paid for with just with a credit card, with an official government credit card. So of course you want to make sure that you can take MasterCard, Visa, all that fun stuff and accept the government cards. And about $20 billion annually is spent on micro purchases. So obviously, just like any other entity or just like any other consumer, sometimes you need something quickly. It doesn't make sense to go through a whole big, long, drawn-out bid process. If it's under a certain dollar threshold, we can just buy what we need so that we can operate and provide those services and things we do to the public on a daily basis. So keep that in mind. Micro purchases is something that can be very lucrative for a lot of small businesses, especially when you're first jumping in to federal contracting. Now, sealed bidding, this is a really popular method. The three things I should say you'll see the most often from us on sam.gov are sealed bidding, request for proposals, and RFQ or request for quotes, which we're going to talk about. So sealed bidding, this is a type of bid solicitation where you submit an offer based on exactly what our specifications are. So with this type of solicitation, we know not only what we want our end result to be, we're going to tell you exactly how we want you to do the work for us, how we want you to implement it, what sort of materials to use, and so on and so forth. So we're going to evaluate this solicitation will be evaluated according to specific criteria in the solicitation offer. We're going to tell you how we're going to evaluate you. Everybody's going to be held to the exact same standard because we're telling you everything. We're going to give you all those specifics. All you have to do is respond, and this type of contract will be awarded to what's called the lowest responsible bidder, or LPTA, the lowest price technically acceptable. So in this case, we are going to award to the person that has the cheapest price that meets our technical specifications. So in this type of solicitation offer, it will be awarded based on price, and whoever's cheapest that meets our criteria, that's who's going to get the contract. Again, with sealed bidding, we know what we want at the end, and we know exactly how we want you to do it for us. That's different from an RFP, however. Now, an RFP is an objective-based procurement. So with this type of solicitation, we know what we want our end result to be. We know what we need. We don't know how to get there. We're going to rely on you as the expert in your industry to tell us what is the best way to accomplish that task to get us what we need. So we have something, we know we know what we need that end result to be, but we don't have the expertise to do it. So we're going to describe in general terms on how exactly we think this may work. It's going to be up to you, though, to determine how to best meet that need that we have. So once you submit your proposal to us, this type of procurement is actually going to be subject to negotiations prior to an award being made, and it will be awarded on overall best value. The reason being is if we have 20 different offerers put in a submission for this type of award, we could have 20 different ways of accomplishing that task. So at that point, we have to make the decision of which one best suits our needs, what falls into our budget, what makes the most sense for us. So we're going to look at that and really, scrutinize all of them, and we're going to award on overall best value. So best value does not necessarily mean cheapest price. Sometimes people call and they're screaming, hey, I submitted this RFP and I was the lowest bidder and I didn't get the contract. Well, we may have paid $2 million more because this person can do the project in 1 year, and you said your solution was going to take 3 years. So we paid $2 million to get it done in 2 years faster time. Is that best value? Maybe, it depends. It depends entirely on what the contracting officer and the agency was able to determine and made the most sense for them. So keep that in mind. So not everything's cheap. Sometimes we go with best value. Requests for quotes. These are pretty standard, off-the-shelf, commodity-type items. You know, I need 5,000 blue pens. How much is it? Well, not too much there, nothing real crazy. Looking for most competitive price, and sole source contracts. I do like to mention these. Now, sole source contracts we'll get into a little bit when we talk about the certification piece, but we do, when it makes sense, have the ability as a federal agency in the federal government to sole source a contract, meaning we can award contracts valued at over $25,000 with no competition. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the certification piece, but that's where those kind of come into play. A lot of times, though, you'll see this on the open market for like really specialty items, like different intellectual properties or something just very unique that you know, not a lot of people do. So I do like to mention it. Not a very common solicitation or type of offer that you'll see, but you know, sometimes they are used on occasion on SAM.gov when they're on there. So I just like to mention those. I do want to mention GSA schedule contracts. Now, this is another buying method. Now, how GSA schedule contracts or federal supply schedules, multiple award schedules, MAS contracts, these are pre-negotiated, large volume contracts where we have a list of pre-approved vendors, I should say, that submitted a set of paperwork to us for specific products and commodity type products and services. They're on this pre-approved list, and our federal contracting officers can just buy directly from these lists without having to go through competition. So it just kind of is the idea behind it is just kind of simplify the buying to not have all that staff power and all that work and effort of going through a formal certification process. From the vendor side, these are still pretty tough to get on. A typical GSA schedule, if you want to list your products and services on one, you're looking at about 9 months or so to get everything listed. Once you're on that schedule, though, the really cool thing is you then have at least a minimum of a 5-year open-ended opportunity with the federal government. So what that means is you're on that pre-approved list for 5 years, and federal agencies can just buy directly from you. There's no cap on the dollar value, which is great. So you don't have to worry about that $10,000 minimum threshold or the $25,000. If an agency wants to buy, you know, $1 million worth of products and services off of your GSA schedule, they can order $1 million. But the idea is you're already pre-approved to offer those products and services. Again, though, GSA schedules are only going to be used for commercial type products and services and commodity type things. So if you're a vendor or a small business that focuses exclusively on specialty work or different one-off products or jobs or things of that nature, GSA is not going to be something you want to take a look at. And finally, subcontracting. Now, this isn't a direct contracting method, but like I said, it can be very good and beneficial for small businesses. Anything at $750,000 or more at the federal level, any procurement opportunity has to have a subcontracting plan. So it's a great way for small businesses to learn the ropes of the federal market when they first get into this. And pretty much you just want to identify potential prime contractors that you may want to work with to find out how you can become one of their pre-approved subcontractors. So that's a business relationship you establish with that prime contractor, but you know, it's something that can be very, very helpful for small businesses when they first start out. So I do want to mention that. That's not a direct opportunity with us, but anything we have at $750,000 or more will absolutely have to have that subcontracting plan in place. Okay, so we're going to jump in a little bit into the certification programs. So at the federal level, we have a 23% overall small business goal. And then within that small business goal, that 23%, we actually recognize 4 socioeconomic groups. We have women-owned small businesses, small disadvantaged businesses, or our 8A certification, hub zone small businesses, which stands for Historically Underutilized Business Zone Program, and also our service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So we're going to talk about each of these, but this is another area where sometimes people think these percentages are too low. So when I said that 23% overall goal at the federal level, that means 23% of all federal contracting dollars we put out on the street are set aside and have to go to small businesses. So last year, that 23%, our agencies hit like 26, 27%. They did really well with that. And this is an area that the SBA really has a big role. We serve as the watchdog agency for all the other federal entities to make sure that our small businesses are getting their fair share of these opportunities. That 23% last year, or 26%, was about $160 billion set aside just for small businesses to compete on. So again, that idea that all the big guys grab all the money, absolutely false. With the women-owned program, that number is around 5%. Last year was a little under, I think it was like 4.49, was still about $28 billion spent on women-owned small businesses. The 8A program was around 11%. That was really good. It was about $59–60 billion, may have been a little more. HubZone, that's the one socioeconomic program that the federal government has never hit the goal on. It was around 3%. It was around $14 billion still. And the service-disabled vet, they exceeded that, was around $26 billion. So we're talking about a lot of money potentially attached to these certification programs, in addition to what you can get for just being a small business. So that's why these certifications can be so helpful and so lucrative for a lot of small business clients. So I always tell clients, if you qualify for a certification, absolutely take a look at it. Potentially let's apply for it. It's never ever going to hurt you. It's just going to open up some more potential doors for you. However, if you don't qualify for a certification, being a small business for a lot of our clients really is enough. So we're going to talk mainly about the women-owned small business certification today. But I will briefly go over the first couple here just so you know. Now, first of all, as far as being a small business and a federally certified small business at the federal level, there's no formal certification you have to do. It's actually done for you when you register in sam.gov. Whenever you find out your NAICS code, once you plug that into sam.gov, we're going to take a look at one of two things once we know your industry. Some industries will look at your average annual receipts for the past 5 years. Some industries will look at your average number of employees. That is what's called the SBA size standards, and that's what determines whether or not you're a small business. So whenever you plug in your information, depending on your NAICS, it's going to be one or the other, not both. So if you plug in your NAICS code and your industry is a industry that's based on number of employees, some industries if you have 500 employees or less, you're considered a small business. So if you're a small business under that NAICS code, you have 5 people on staff, you're automatically considered a small business. SAM will do that check for you against the SBA size standards table when you actually register in SAM. It's all intertwined and done in there. So at the end of the registration, if SAM says that you're a small business, then in the eyes of the federal government, you are a federally certified small business. There's no additional certification or process you have to go through. We have a lot of people contact us. They always want a small business certificate to say they're a federal small business. We actually don't have one. It's all done in sam.gov. So I do like to mention that. Now, as far as the other socioeconomic programs, these do require a little more work and a little extra heavy lifting to kind of get through. So our 8A program is our economically and socially disadvantaged small business development program. So this is for anybody that's both economically and socially disadvantaged who is a U.S. citizen. Certain designated groups, certain minority groups are already deemed to be disadvantaged. Women are eligible for this if they can prove they've been disadvantaged in some capacity. So keep that in mind. But if you have $750,000 or less in personal net worth, if you're owned by someone whose average adjusted income for the 3 years is $350,000 or less and $6 million or less in assets, then you could potentially get into the 8A program. So it's a very interesting program. It's good for 9 years, so you get 1 9-year term in the program, and it's a true business development program. We give you access to a lot of coaching, a lot of classes and things to really help you grow and expand your business so at the end of that 9-year term, you can compete successfully without the use of the certification. So it's a little different than our other certification programs. The other big benefit is the ability to get sole source and set-aside contracts through the certification programs, and especially with the 8A. So I mentioned that $10,000 or less as far as the micro purchase threshold, and anything over has to be competitively bid out. With the 8A program, we can award contracts valued at up to $4.5 million or $6 million, depending on your industry, with no competition at all. That certification in and of itself allows us to do that. So if you're certified, we can hand you a contract up to a few $1 million without having to go through a competitive bid process. So that's why it's always kind of important that we take a look at all the information and make sure that only the firms that are actually allowed to be in these certification programs are actually the ones in there getting this work. So that's 8A. Woman-owned small business, which we're going to discuss here in a minute. I'm going to get into some detail on that one. But it looks very similar to the 8A program. The business must be 51% owned and controlled by women in this case, obviously, not disadvantaged individuals. And we have two different levels within the women-owned program. We have women-owned small business certification and economically disadvantaged women-owned small business certification. And that is based on your NAICS codes again. So some industries are going to be underrepresented, have underrepresented women representation. Some have severely underrepresented women representation. So that's the difference between the women-owned and the economically disadvantaged. Veteran-owned small business, we recognize both veterans and service-disabled vets. Program works much the same way as the other two, 51% owned and controlled by vets. And finally, the Hub Zone program. Now, the Hub Zone program is a little different. The company has to be owned by U.S. citizens, but the business itself has to be located in an approved SBA Hub Zone as designated on the SBA Hub Zone map. So at maps.certified.sba.gov there, see if the little pointer works. If your business is located in one of those pre-approved hub zones, then you could potentially get the hub zone certification. So as opposed to the other three certifications, which are based on ownership, hub zone is location-based. So these are areas of the country, little pockets, designated areas of the country that SBA has determined to be economically depressed, not having their fair share of opportunities for business, and so on and so forth. So we actually give contracting incentives for people that relocate or have a business located in one of those hub zone areas. So obviously today we're going to stick with the federal, the women-owned small business certification. And again, the idea behind the WSB program, or WOSB, however you want to say it, is to take advantage of annual prime contracting goals to help women-owned small businesses build their capacity and grow and get access to those set-asides and sole source contracts. Now I will explain the difference between set-aside and sole source in a couple of slides here. But just so you're aware, prior to October 14th of 2020, this program used to be a self-certification. So we did away with the self-certification though, meaning that before that time, you would just submit some documents into an online portal, and if a contracting officer wanted to make an award to you using this program, they would check and verify your documents at the time of contract award. We don't do that anymore. Unfortunately, contracting officers are business people. Their responsibility, again, is to conduct the business of the government. They are not small business people. So some were hesitant to use it because they didn't necessarily understand an operating agreement. They didn't understand the different licenses and things that small business owners may have. So what we have now is we have a formal certification program. So now you can actually submit your documentation to the SBA, where we are staffed with lots of small business specialists and people that understand these things, and we will actually pre-approve you into the woman-owned small business certification program. So you don't have to rely on that self-certification anymore. So I do like to mention that. You can get certification one of two ways, totally for free, where you just apply directly online through our portal at beta.certified.sba.gov, which we will go through here shortly, or you can use one of our 4 pre-approved third-party certifiers. So we have 4 pre-approved agencies that actually meet the standards to offer our woman-owned small business certification. So if you already have a woman-owned certificate from one of those 4 entities, you can actually just upload your certificate into our portal, and that will count for your certification. So you don't have to go through a separate one with us. It's up to you whether or not you use the third party. Just be aware that those third party certifiers do typically charge fees, and they are allowed to. Ours is totally free when you do it directly with us, but if you're already paying and getting other services from one of those entities, it may make more sense just to have them do it for you, but it's entirely up to you. So I did want to mention that very, very briefly. And I'm sure you saw the WSB Ready and the Challenge Her initiative and everything. Just to give you a quick note on this, this is just an expanded partnership with different stakeholders and things where we're just trying to really get the word out to help our women-owned small businesses take advantage of these federal contracting opportunities. So if you see anything with WSB Ready or Challenge Her program or anything like that, there's just some different initiatives going on with social media, with different challenges and things. We have a number of different WSB events that have been happening and are continuing to happen, where we can get you some training and some things to help you get ramped up a little more quickly. And the idea, again, is just to give our WSB clients that push they need so that they can be successful and kind of scale a little more quickly. So is WSB certification appropriate for you? Things we're always going to look at are on the slide there. Always, number one though, that 51% ownership and control. It's not just ownership on paper. That's the biggest thing that really holds back a lot of our clients, whether it's the WSB program, 8A, what have you, the veteran program. So, you know, if all your documents, the licenses and everything, all say that you're the 100% owner, but then we take a look at your operating agreement and see that you can actually get outvoted, then you don't actually control the direction of your company. And how to really really interesting situation with a veteran a couple of years ago where pretty much that exact thing happened. He was the 100% owned his company. Hey, I'm the vet. I'm the only one that's the vet, blah, blah, blah. He kept getting his vet certification kicked back from headquarters. Couldn't figure out why. And so we took a look at it. His operating agreement actually said that his sons both had ownership stakes. So there was 3 of them, and it was all 33.3. So his sons could outvote him at 66.6% and control the direction of his company if they didn't like what he was doing. Now his sons were 18 and 21 years old, and he was like, oh, there's no way my kids would ever do that, blah, 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 blah. Well, then when you looked at their social media profiles, the 18 and 21-year-olds also listed themselves publicly on Facebook and LinkedIn as president of Dad's company. So now you have 3 people representing themselves in a public manner as the alleged president of the company. He's saying he's the 100% owner, but his operating agreement says these 2 other presidents could outvote him if they wanted to. So now he's got a problem. So, no matter what you think, I've seen a lot of family relationships go very south. So don't do that. Always put it in writing. I know John's probably shaking his head thinking too. Husband and wives have gotten divorced, and brothers and sisters don't talk anymore, and all that fun stuff. So, always rely on what's in the paperwork. That's always what we're going to look at. So we expect you to have the highest officer position, that you can manage the daily operations of the company, and that you have the experience in the industry sector that you actually own your company in, obviously. Now, one of the very unique things about the WSB program is there is no minimum time in business, which is great. So we don't have that 2-year minimum rule like we do with some of the other certifications. So if you don't have a lot of experience, that's fine. You can actually get into this program as a woman-owned small business, as a startup, and it's all about, again, helping you get access to this so that you can put that as part of your branding, your marketing, to help you scale your business that much more quickly. As far as the economically disadvantaged requirements, that's going to be, again, the NAICS code, and those requirements, if you look at that, is exactly the same as the 8A. So if you qualify as an economically disadvantaged 8A company, you could potentially, or as a woman-owned small business, you could potentially qualify as an 8A and vice versa. Yeah, Chad, you had a question?
Yeah, on the previous screen, it's about management of daily operations. So I've experienced working with WeBank and the WBC, where I actually got out and interviewed women-owned business. Truly understand they are managing the operating, and understand what they do every day.
Sure.
If you're doing the free version, is somebody actually going out and interviewing that woman-owned business to understand?
Typically not to that level. We don't necessarily have somebody going out doing a formal site visit. On occasion, we may if it's something really looking kind of goofy, but we're going to rely on the business owner. It's going to be what they attest to in their application as far as what they say. And so sometimes what will happen is, we're going to look at your hours worked and how often you're working in the company, what it is you do, your area of expertise. Even your volunteer work will go into that. So sometimes people say, okay, I work full-time in my business. I'm putting in 78 hours a week in my business. Then I do 20 hours at my church. I do another 50 hours at the food bank. Suddenly they do 400 hours a week working in all these places. No, you're not. So now we're going to look at that and see what's actually going on there. Okay, but again, those are very, very close to the 8A program, or actually exactly. So if you qualify for one, you may have some nice opportunities in the other certification. Now this is the qualifying NAICS codes. Any NAICS code is eligible for the Women-Owned Small Business Program, but again, only certain NAICS codes will be economically disadvantaged. So it depends entirely on what you do. So if you're a wood window and door manufacturer, you would be an EDWOSB per your NAICS code, but if you were a commercial screen printer, you would be a WOSB. There's no real difference between the two. It's just some areas, again, are severely underrepresented by women, and some are not as severely underrepresented. That's really the only difference between the industries. And you can find what your NAICS code is right at the SBA.gov website that I have there. So as far as the WSB certification process, yeah, John?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Are you going to go into like the cost compared to maybe some other groups that do fees and stuff like that at all?
Well, we don't charge. Yeah, so at the federal level, like I said, ours is totally free. The other ones, I don't know what their fees are as far as the third-party certifiers, if they're doing that. I do know that they do charge fees, though. I think it's typically so much like a percentage of your sales or something, I've heard. But we don't really have much to do with the third-party certifiers. We obviously focus on the free. So yeah, I can't help you too much as far as the fees. But again, just be cautious of that. But as far as our certification process, It's really just a few steps you have to do. You're going to register in SAM, which you've already done because you have to do it anyway before you even get to this point. You're going to submit your application at beta.certify.sba.gov and then make sure your status is represented in SAM. So beta.certify.sba.gov is simply our portal for the Woman-Owned Small Business Certification Program. It will actually talk to the SAM system. So the first thing you do when you go in to register is you'll do what we call claiming your business from SAM. So you'll start your portal application. It'll then pull information from SAM and kind of import that and everything. And then you just complete everything online. Kind of the old way with the program too. There was a lot of stuff that some things had to even be like kind of printed off and filled out in hard copy and then re-uploaded. We don't have any of that going on anymore, thank goodness. It's just all entirely online. So when you go to beta.certify, you can go to Am I Eligible? That's always one of the first things I like to have clients do. We have two different ways to access it. That is a nice little tool you can use to actually see what certification programs you're eligible for. Not just the WSB program, but when you plug in some information in there, it just takes a minute or two, it'll actually tell you if you may be qualified as a hub zone, as a veteran-owned small business, or as an 8A company. So we do like to have clients do that and just kind of take a quick look at that. From there, you want to go to Prepare, and it will take you to the document checklist. Now the document checklist of what you need to submit at beta.certify will not look like this. I did that for the slides to make it colored. But if you're doing a woman-owned small business certification, again, depending on your NAICS codes, you're going to need to supply everything in the blue column. If you're doing economically disadvantaged, you have to do everything in the blue and the red column. Sometimes people think they just have to do the red, but without the blue, but we need everything. And we will also take a look potentially at your spouse if you're married, and we're going to get a lot more for the economically disadvantaged portion into your personal finances and some of those different thresholds. Again, because there are those different things attached to that, so we're going to look at W-2s, taxes, all that sort of fun stuff. So it is a little bit of prep work as far as getting your information ready. And that's always one of the key things you want to do. Make sure you get your documents in order before you start these portals. That'll help you tremendously because once you start some of these things, the clock starts, and then it can be hard to find, oh crap, I don't have this document, I got to go look for it, you don't have it. So it's just much easier if you go through these and make sure you have everything ready to go before you actually start in the system. Once you do that, you're going to go to Get Started. And it has a little 3-step process here. And what's it say? Number 1 is SAM. Well, you're already good there because you've already done it. Create your SBA account. You already have a login.gov. You will have done that whenever you logged into SAM. So your login.gov will also be good here. And then really it's just going for number 3 there and claiming your business in the beta.certify site. So as long as you have good business records, working through this application on the beta.certify shouldn't take you more than an hour or so, if that. It's very, very streamlined, relatively simple. Once you claim your company, you're going to have to answer some basic questions. After you do the basic eligibility questions, it'll double check to confirm that you are indeed small. System does all that for you. Once it finds everything, it'll take you to the dashboard to actually begin your process for the application. Now the cool thing is, we actually have detailed training videos with step-by-step screenshots right on the beta.certified knowledge base. So it's very easy for you to go and pull those videos up. I have clients that'll open one screen, one window with the video, one with the app. They watch the video, just pause, enter info, pause, enter info, work through it, and you can knock it out in no time. Very streamlined and relatively simple to get through. Once we have a complete package, SBA takes 90 to 120 days in most cases. Now the key thing there is a complete package. One of the things that people do sometimes is they think they have to get this information in or they're worried about timing, so they start an incomplete application and submit it to us with the anticipation that we're going to come back and say, hey, we need you to send this or whatever, and we're going to wait on them. We don't do that. So if you do that and it takes us 60 days before we look at it the first time and realize you sent us an incomplete package, we're going to send it back. By the time you resend all the information, it's going to be another 3-4 months on top of that 60 days you already wasted. So get your information and have all your ducks in a row first before you submit. Can't stress that enough. And again, the knowledge base is where you can find those videos right there on the site there, and very, very quick and easy. It is not as cumbersome as some people make it out to be. As long as you have your documents in order, you keep good business records, and you just give us what we ask for as far as what you have to submit on those documentation checklists, you will have very minimal problems, short of some kind of really just obscure extreme tech issue. Working through that portal is not that bad. It really isn't. So don't get too frustrated with it. Again, this is an area where we can help. Our other counselors, our PTACs are more than happy to hold your hand through this. And again, the opportunity to compete on set-asides or sole source contracts is what we're looking for here. So set-asides is when we will actually put a solicitation offer out on the street saying that only people with a particular designation can even compete on the work. So you're still competing, but only against people that have that same certification as you, versus a sole source contract where that's where we only have one reasonable supplier and we can award that directly without competition. So the idea is we'll streamline that pool of candidates, we'll narrow that down so that only a woman-owned small business, one way or another, is going to get that work, either through a set-aside or a sole source. And all of our certification programs work in a similar manner, and that's one of the ways that we really focus and make sure that money is going to people in those socioeconomic programs, because that's very, very key and important to us to make sure that all of our small businesses, and especially people that have been underserved and underrepresented, are getting their fair share of those opportunities. So once you've done that, you have your certification, that ability to qualify for the set-asides and sole source, the opportunity to build capacity and kind of grow your business and get you access to that different training, technical assistance. We have bonding assistance, things of that nature. And we're going to talk about some proactive self-marketing, and then I'll be happy to take some questions. We'll probably be finishing up in about 15 minutes or so. So be a little early probably today, but we will be good to go here. So really, proactive self-marketing. Now, marketing is definitely fun when it comes to marketing to the federal government. This is where you get to be a little creative and you don't have to follow a bunch of weird federal acquisition regulation rules or any of that fun stuff. So let's talk about that a little bit. There is definitely a proper way to strategically market your products and services to federal contracting officers through a capability statement or when approaching them directly. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things I used to see when I used to award contracts, about what not to do, about how not to approach us, and how to actually approach us. So marketing to federal agencies. Why do we even want to do it in the first place? Everything's supposed to be free and open, fair and open competition, all that fun stuff. Why do we want to do it? Well, like we talked about, not every purchase we make every single day is done through a sealed bid, lowest price procurement method. We want to make sure that we're comfortable with you as a vendor. So if we know you and we have ways to work with you, we're going to want to do that and establish those relationships. And we want those, we want you to have those opportunities to do that and learn about us as well. Micro purchases and other small purchases are not competitively bid, and government agencies, like I said earlier, need to know what? Same thing I had in there at the beginning when we started, that you exist and want your business, that your products will help them achieve their objectives in a cost-efficient and effective manner, good products, and how to buy from you. That's really what it's about. So the ways to do that, obviously register in SAM and DSBS, you have to do that anyway. Consider getting a GSA schedule if that makes sense, the networking, but the two we're going to talk about and focus on today, direct email, which is going to involve developing a government-focused capability statement and contacting potential buyers within federal agencies to actually introduce your company, to talk about your products and services, and find out how to do business with them. And again, there is a right way and a wrong way. So as far as a capability statement, what is it? A capability statement is pretty much just a resume for your business. It's a concise, quick, one-page document that tells a little bit about your business competencies. It's just to give customers an incentive to want to learn more about you. It's not anything that needs to be 15, 20 pages. If you're over a page, it's too long. We want, there's some key points and things we're going to hit. We're actually going to go through a cap statement. But when written properly, the idea is just to help you differentiate yourself from the competition so that you can stand out in the mind of those government buyers and to give you those opportunities to work with them. So again, should be very brief, should be a living document that can and will change. So do not print large quantities of your capability statement. I've had clients create a capability statement, they print like 1,500 copies of this at some professional printer and spend all this money on it, and then 6 months later they're looking at a new product or service, adding a new NAICS code, a new certification to their profile, and that capability statement is now worthless, because they have a totally different skill set or something now. So don't do that. So you really want to just develop a master copy that can be tailored as needed to those different entities. You want to save the document and send it when we do as a PDF. One of the things that's interesting about the federal sector is we have a lot of security, as I'm sure you can imagine, on our systems and things. PDFs stay visually consistent and they get through our portals usually. In certain cases, some of our agencies, especially DoD, can't even open certain types of documents, like Word documents, won't even go through due to security. So PDFs stay consistent, they're always going to look good, and they'll get through our security protocols. And remember to stress your core competencies, differentiators, and past performance. This is not when you want to get too creative with your writing or try to beef it up with a lot of fluff. We just want to see exactly what it is you do, what you bring to the table as far as being that small business expert for us. So this is an example of a capability statement and the different sections in it. We're looking again at those 5 key areas. We want core competencies, differentiators, past performance, company data, and contact information. So core competencies, we want to know what is it that you do. This isn't going to be anything and everything about your business, just bullet points and short statements about your prime area of expertise as it relates to the agency's specific needs. So this example was from one of my 8A clients. But as far as capabilities, she has an electrical company, and they're experts in power quality monitoring, grounding audits, infrared scanning. She just has short, concise statements there about what exactly it is that her capabilities are. That's what we want to see. So what is she an expert in? Differentiators. We want to see those unique factors and benefits that really set you apart from your competition. Why are you the potential best solution for the agency's needs? What makes you special? That's what we want to see there. We want to know what it is that really sets you apart. And differentiators, your certifications are not a differentiator. Like I said, we already have processes in place at the federal level to allow us to award contracts to people that have those certifications through either those set-asides or those sole source mechanisms. So that's really not going to differentiate you anymore because we're already stacking the deck to make sure that those contracts are going to those people potentially. So that's not what we're after. We want to see, really what it is you do. Can you save us 20% on our electrical system? Can you help our costs go down? Do you have the best safety record in the industry? Stuff that really that really is impactful for us at the federal level. That's what we're looking for. Past performance, it's always a good idea to list a few past performance projects. As I said, that's always very key for us, so we like to see that on the capability statement. If you could show the benefit to the customer for the type of work you've done, very similar projects in the commercial sector. You can provide references if you have space, but typically if we want references for an opportunity, we will ask for them, so don't feel like you have to. But if an experience is not relatable to the agency you're targeting, don't list it on this capability statement. Especially if you are one of those companies and maybe you do have a couple different divisions, don't go trying to use experience from another division for a project for something else that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we want to see that experience for the type of work you're actually trying to acquire and your company data. Always very, very key. We want to make sure that you have your UEI, your CAGE code, your NAICS codes, any certifications you may have. You can have a different box for or whatever. 1 or 2 short sentences of a company description if you have the room for it. Any logos or anything you may have access to. State contract numbers, for example, this particular one has PA-UCP certification, which is the Unified Certification Program. Some of you may be familiar with or have heard about. So we really want to see, though, again, your DUNS, your CAGE, to know that you're registered, that you have the expertise, and what it is that you do. So that's really what we're after as far as company data. And please, please, please don't forget to put your contact information. I've seen many capability statements where I have all this great stuff in front of me and I don't have a contact. And people think, oh, well, I'm just going to give you the card. Well, if the card gets separated from the capability statement and it's not real clear about what belongs to what, especially if I'm at a networking event or a trade show when I used to do those sorts of things, you end up with 1,000 of these and a whole bunch of business cards and it's just a mess. Make it simple. Keep your information on there so that it's easily to find you and identify you. Okay? And list a professional email address. That's something, again, that's very important. Sometimes people get a little too creative with their emails and they try to come up with really funny, obscure things for their email address or their email handle. I get some really goofy things sometimes where people say, hey, this contracting officer won't get back to me. And I'm like, what's your email? Well, it's ilovedonkeybutts@whatever.com. Don't send us stuff like that, okay? It's not going to get through our security. We're not going to open it. Just don't do it. So you'd be surprised how many people do that. Okay, so final tips on the cap statement. As long as you hit those 5 key areas, there's no single approved format. You can be creative but sensible. Use a nice format. Don't use anything too crazy or off the wall. I always kind of say with this, if you use all these goofy rainbow colors and I have to stare at it like one of those 3D prisms to try and get the image to pop out at me to figure out what you do, that it's too much. You know, dial it back a little bit. Don't print large quantities like we said. And don't hesitate to solicit feedback from friends and coworkers or your PTAC or business counselors before you start sending it to people. You know, we're more than happy to proofread it for you and make sure you have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Okay, so you got your certifications and everything, did this capability statement. Now what? Now we're actually going to figure out how to use it. So these are things that people used to come to me and say whenever I used to award contracts way back when. So, you know, hi, I own an 8A certified business. What kind of contracts do you have for me? We are a small business working in the construction industry or whatever. We install flooring, roofing, and everything in between. Hi, my company is ABC Corporation. I'm certified MWDBE, PAUCP, Hub Zone, Section 3, blah, 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 on and on and on. And what do these all have in common as far as a way to approach federal buyers? They're all terrible. Do not do that. You want to make sure that you have an elevator pitch ready, that you can talk sensibly about what it is that you do. Don't just approach federal buyers with the expectation that you're somehow owed a contract or that we're going to give you a contract because you have a certain certification or whatever else. I mean, if you notice in any of these examples, the person didn't even say their name. And I used to have people so excited, they'd come running up to me, hey, what do you have for me? I do this, I do that. Or I'm Section 3 certified. Well, Section 3 certification only applies to HUD, you know, Housing and Urban Development as an agency. Well, if I don't work for HUD, I don't care about Section 3 certification. I may not even know what it is. So we really need you to tell us what it is you're bringing to the table. We want to hear about your value. Your company is not its statuses. Nor is it your products and services. We want to know what it is you're bringing to the table that makes you unique and sets you apart and helps us, you know, reduce our costs or improve our safety or whatever it is that we're trying to do. What makes you different and your past performance. Those are really the 3 things that we really want to know and hear about when we first meet you. So for how you should talk to a federal buyer is we want to hear your elevator pitch. So in this case, in a little hypothetical here, hi, my name's Brenda. I came across some information recently. You had a major problem with your electrical system. And she's telling me, okay, she's taking an interest in me a little bit. She's kind of said, you know, I've realized you had a problem with this. You know, my company provides high quality electrical maintenance solutions. We can actually save you money. If you hire me, I can do an evaluation and so on and so forth. And she's talking. It's just a normal conversation, right? It's nothing crazy. There's no expectation. She's not running up to the table or the contracting officer trying to beat me over the head saying I better buy her stuff or else. You know, don't do that. You know, the last sentence there, the last paragraph I really like. We're very proud to have done some major projects with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Pittsburgh Steelers, you know, UPMC, Sunoco. So we got a multi-billion-dollar sports franchise on there. Then finally we end with, hey, by the way, I can also assist you and help you meet your socioeconomic goals because I'm in the 8A program. So that's just a kind of a throw in, and that's when I'm thinking, okay, so now she's got all this great experience, she's taken an interest in my agency, she knows I could potentially use her, and she can help me meet my socioeconomic goals through streamlined procurement procedures. That's what we want to hear. So that's really what we're looking for there, is that elevator pitch and making sure that you can communicate yourself, your business, and what you're offering the federal government in an effective, clear, and concise manner, and that you can be that mission-focused expert we want. When you're doing it via email, when you're contacting federal buyers, or any buyer really, one of the things that's really unique is we have what's called OSDBUs, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization Offices. Every federal agency has one, and at that link right there, and I'll be happy to send this out to anybody, you can very easily find the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization contact person. A lot of times when people start marketing to federal agencies, they want to go straight to the contracting officer. The contracting officer, again, is the federal buying expert. They are not the small business specialist there to help you get a contract. The OSDBU person is that person. So you want to go to the OSDBU person, you want to send your capability statement, compose a brief introductory letter, to them, to that OSDBU, let them know, hey, I'd like to work with your agency, what is it that I need to do to have a potential opportunity, and that's who you want to send your capability statement and that letter to. So you're going to attach each of those as separate PDFs. Don't merge them together, one PDF for the letter and one PDF for your capability statement. And that is what your letter is going to look like. Now that's a template I threw together a number of years ago, and it's been extremely successful for a lot of clients just to get people started. So do whatever you want with it. Again, I'm more than happy to provide this to you. Send it to Tim and John here at the SBDC so they have access to it and can get it to clients. But this is just a template just to help you be in the right mindset of what it is we're looking for. So you're going to send that with, again, a separate PDF. So the reason being is because on this document, this is going to go to the OSDBU. They're going to keep this. We're asking them for specific information about any forums or websites we have in regards to working with their agency, but also workload projections or forecasts, specific points of contact, any additional information. So we're asking them for action items. So we want them to reply to us with a response to those action items. More than likely, though, they're going to take that capability statement. Since you were kind enough to submit it as a separate PDF, they can very easily send that off to their procurement teams. So you don't have to try and guess what contracting officer to work with or what agency you're trying to deal with. Go to that OSDBU office, send them the letter along with their capability statement. They'll probably keep both, but they'll definitely keep the letter, and they can get that capability statement to the decision makers for those opportunities. So that's really how you want to approach that, and that's the best way to absolutely do it. So just to recap, same thing I said before, that you exist, want their business, government customers need to know that. Simplicity. Be strategic, though, when you're starting out in this. You could really spend a lot of staff power and hours going down a lot of different rabbit holes, trying to break through with the federal sector. It can be very brutal. So don't do that to yourself. Start small, realize that government contracting is a very potentially lucrative opportunity, but it's a great way to supplement your commercial sector sales. I have very few small business clients that sustain themselves entirely on federal work. Budgets come and go, different elected officials come in and things, priorities change, and we all know how that stuff works. So be strategic. Focus on a few key agencies at first and really try to grow your government portfolio over a period of time. It can take some years to do that, but that's really what you want to do. So stay focused and be committed to it, but don't go too nuts. And this is just a slide of some local small business resources. Obviously, our PCRs is a division at the SBA, Small Business Administration District offices, like me at the Western PA office, or Solomon earlier for the Eastern PA office. You can find all the links there. Our SBDC score chapters, our PTACs. If you want to keep in touch with us at the district office, you can sign up for our Gov deliveries. Anytime we have outreach or training events, they'll all be publicly announced through there. You can sign up via text or email. If you ever want just a general question answered, wpainfo@sba.gov. We have multiple staff members that monitor that box on a daily basis. And there is my contact info along with my coworker, Marissa. We're the two government contracting specialists for our area. So that's our contact information. So that is all I have. So we have plenty of time. Any questions? I know that was a lot. Again, don't get overwhelmed. It's definitely doable, but if anybody has anything they'd like me to answer, I'd be more than happy to do that. No? Okay.
Well, no, I think it's interesting there's no wait period so today I can start a business.
Sure, yeah.
So there's no hold period.
No.
Normally it's 2 years.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, as far as the certification, once you have all your business documents and everything, you can apply sam.gov, get your cage, and then apply straight to the WSB portal. Yeah.
What's the most common thing that if someone missing a document or goofs something up, what's maybe some of the common things that you might have as oopses that could maybe be prevented?
As far as the certifications?
Like you said, you have it screen by screen.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you see that's just like,
well,
I forgot this, or there's just
yeah.
typing in or something?
The biggest thing, John, honestly, is just people not following the documentation. I mean, we have those checklists right there. Some of our checklists even have a little checkbox on them. And people just, I think, sometimes get to a point where they decide, oh, this is just too much information. They're just going to take what I give them and like it, which we don't do. Or they just miss something and then get frustrated. For example, I had a lady with the Woman-Owned Small Business Program. Her name changed due to marriage. And she, supplied everything, or so she thought. Well, one of the things that our review team asked for was her marriage certificate and her driver's license. That's all she just missed it, And so she waited like 4 months. They finally get to her and tell her, hey, you need to submit this. And she pitched a fit. Just lost her mind over it. Well, why did you take all this other stuff? Well, they needed to see the document that necessitated the name change, just to verify everything. She simply didn't put it in, and instead of just sending it in, she starts filing all these congressional inquiries and all this stuff. So here we are 18 months later, and she's still not certified. And all she had to do was send in her driver's license and marriage certificate. So people sometimes just get frustrated, I think, because the process can take a little time. But the big thing is just not following directions. Even in RFP class, which I'm doing that tomorrow virtually, on how to actually respond to a federal solicitation properly, it's just reading and following directions, and people will just kind of glance over stuff, or they don't, the reading comprehension just doesn't click all the time, or they think they know before they actually read what we ask for. It's not too difficult to do most of this stuff as long as you just read the items like you said and follow the directions. It's pretty simple when you think about it. But sometimes, people just miss things for whatever reason. They're busy or make it a little harder than it needs to be on themselves.
As a small business banker, when customers come set up their bank accounts, one of the things that they're missing when they set their entity, they don't have an operating agreement or bylaw.
Yes.
So they go out on the state website, file a fictitious name or their certificate of formation or organization, but they don't do a bylaw or.
Yep, that's
required on your documentation.
Yes, that's required on ours. And some states don't require those things. Right. So and we do. So. Okay, anything else?
I think going back to the beginning, if there is that 2-year period, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you operate in North Carolina, you relocate in the last 6 months because of COVID to Pittsburgh. Do they, is there understanding that this entity now is operating in a new state? You're providing the same services and goods, whether they were once operating, say, in Charlotte, but now they're operating in Pittsburgh. Is that still the
Yep. For federal purposes, yes. Yeah, we don't, federal opportunities, once you're registered in SAM and WSB and all that stuff, these are nationwide opportunities. So as long as you're a United States business, and your company's set up and you're contributing to the U.S. economy or whatever, we don't worry about that. Now, state and local governments, they may look at that a little differently and say, okay, well, you operated in another state for 10 years. We want to see some capacity here first, blah, blah, blah. Right. Federal government, though, as long as you're in the U.S., you're good.
Pretty much if you're just the same EIN, you're...
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. Yep, we don't worry about that at all. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you everyone for attending the event this afternoon with Dave and the Small Business Administration. Here we are coming toward the end of Wednesday with Global Entrepreneurship Week. We still have 2 days of events left, so lots going on tomorrow. I believe there's only about 4 events on Friday, so you might want to jam-pack your schedule tomorrow and join us for some more. But thank you very much, Dave, for joining us all the way from Pittsburgh today. Hope you have a safe travel back, and we'll be looking to bring you back in town again sometime. So whether you were here in person or online, we'd like to get feedback from everyone if we can. So we don't have the QR code up for this, but anybody that attends an event this week, if we've tracked your email address, you'll be getting some feedback and follow-up information from us to provide that information via a brief survey. So be on the lookout for that, and have a great rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Thanks, everyone.